Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Vishapad Paramahamsi Paravirajakachar Astatara Satta Hisavanga Shila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Hisavanga Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantagori Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Balaram Lagidra Ashlo Nishingadev Ki Jai. Shri Gaunitai Ki Jai. Mr. Gaura Premanandi, Haribol, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Garanga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna everyone, and welcome to this morning's class. We just did a very short Jaya Radha Madhava this morning because it's a bit of a long class. So first I'm going to be speaking on today's shloka out of the third canto, chapter 27. And then I'm going to just spend a little bit of time at the end speaking about a science-related matter that came up during my last class. So hopefully we'll get through it all. Where are we? Okay, so now we're trying a few new things here with our technology. Okay, Gopal, I'm just going to see if this is going to respond. Do you think I should point it up there? No. No, still not responding. Okay, so Gopal is our slide changer today. Thank you, Gopal. Okay, so we're reading from shloka number 6. Okay, so please repeat. Yamadibir yoga pater Abhyasan Shadayam Vita Mai Bhavena Satchena Matkata Shravanena Cha Yamadibir Yoga Pater Abhyasan Shadayan Vita Mai Bhavena Satchena Matkata Shravanena Cha Yamadibir Yoga Pater Abhyasanshadayanvita Mai bhavena satchena Madkata shravanena cha. Somebody like to lead the chanting? Yamayavya Yogapatir I'm just wondering, do you have the dongle plugged in so that Yamadibe Yogapatayar Abhyasanshadayanvita Thank you, everyone. So, Gopal, the synonyms? Yep. Okay, here we go. Synonyms. Yama Adibi. Beginning with Yama. Yoga Patai. By the yoga system. Abhyasam. Practicing. Shraddhaya Anvita. With great faith. Mahi. Unto me. Bhavana. With devotion. Satchena. Unalloyed. Matkata. Stories about me. Shravanena. By hearing. Cha. And. Okay, translation? Jai. One has to become faithful by practicing the controlling process of the yoga system and must elevate himself to the platform of unalloyed devotional service by chanting and hearing about me. Okay, translation, please respond. One has to become faithful by practicing the controlling process of the yoga system and must elevate himself to the platform of unalloyed devotional service by chanting and hearing about me. Jai. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Okay, so yeah, just leave it on that slide, please, Gopal. Yoga is practiced in 8 different stages: yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyadhara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Yama and niyama mean practicing the controlling process by following strict regulations, and asana refers to the sitting postures. These help raise one to the standard of faithfulness in devotional service. The practice of yoga by physical exercise is not the ultimate goal. The real end is to concentrate and to control the mind and train oneself to be situated in faithful devotional service. Bhavana or bhava is a very important factor in the practice of yoga or in any spiritual process. Bhava is explained in Bhagavad Gita 10.8. Buddha bhava samanvita. One should be absorbed in the thought of love of Krishna. When one knows that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of everything, and that everything emanates from him, aham sarvasya prabhava, then one understands that the Vedanta aphorism, janma jasya yata, the original source of everything, and then he can become absorbed in bhava, or the preliminary stage of love of Godhead. Rupa Goswami explains very nicely in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu how this bhava, or preliminary stage of love of God, is achieved. He states that one, first of all, has to become faithful, shraddhayanvita. Faith is attained by controlling the senses, either by yoga practice, following the rules and regulations and practicing the sitting postures, or by engaging directly in bhakti yoga, as recommended in the previous verse. Of the 9 different items of bhakti yoga, the first and foremost is to chant and hear about the Lord. That is also mentioned here. Mat kata shravanena cha. One may come to the standard of faithfulness by following the rules and regulations of the yoga system, and the same goal can be achieved simply by chanting and hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord. The word cha is significant. Bhakti yoga is direct, and the other process is indirect. But even if the indirect process is taken, there is no success unless one comes fully to the direct process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Therefore, the word satchena is used. In this connection, Swami Sridhar comments that satchena means nishkapatena, without duplicity. The impersonalists are full of duplicity. Sometimes they pretend to execute devotional service, but their ultimate idea is to become one with the Supreme. This is duplicity, kapata. The Bhagavatam does not allow this duplicity. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clearly stated, paramo nirmatsaranam. This treatise, Srimad Bhagavatam, is meant for those who are completely free from envy. The same point is again stressed here. Unless one is completely faithful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages himself in the process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, there is no possibility for liberation. Hare Krishna. Om Mayati Miranda Shaganandana Shalakara Chakshur Unmilitam Mina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakara Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Naranayam Namaskritya Naram Chaivanaradamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tattujayam Udirayat Nashtaparaya Shabhadrishu Nityam Bhagavate Sevayam Bhagavat Tuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So I humbly ask for the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and devotees that I may give a class that is pleasing to our dear Lordships, our acharyas, and also to the Vaishnavas and devotees. Hare Krishna. So, okay, Gopal, the next slide. Yep. Okay, thank you. So, in these few verses at the start of this chapter, which is entitled Understanding Material Nature, Lord Kapila Dev, who is none other than Krishna himself in the form of a Shaktavesha avatar, is describing how the spiritual soul, upon becoming situated within this very dense and dark material energy that we are in at the moment. It is actually very dense and dark, even though we don't notice it so much. So upon becoming situated within this material energy, the spiritual soul becomes caught up in this perpetual instability, right, in which he is constantly changing his sense of identity, he's constantly changing his sense of where he belongs, and he's constantly changing his sense of what his actual activity is. So Lord Kapila Dev is saying that, due to all these constant changes in our own perceptions about who we are and what we are simply, we're more or less floundering around in this material world, moving from one set of circumstances to the next. And our misunderstanding about who we are and what we are is connected to our misunderstanding or our misinterpretation of this material environment that is surrounding us. So actually misunderstanding material nature, it is one of the biggest and most prevalent problems for the materially absorbed individual, the materially embodied individual, and that means pretty much everyone here in this world in which we are living. Even as devotees, us who are on this path, right, we are learning to distinguish between what is spirit and what is matter, still for us it is difficult to accurately understand how this world around us is functioning. And it is actually only by the mercy of our previous acharyas who have shared with us their insights into how this material energy is actually impacting on us, and through their wise counsel and their instructions, by their mercy, we are able to start to see what is the right path for us and where we should actually place our feet as we are walking along our journey. So under the spell of material nature, the materially embodied souls, they are imagining that this material world, it's actually meant for their enjoyment, for their pleasure. They imagine that this world has no higher meaning or no higher purpose. And so they set out trying to enjoy this world as much as they can, right? They are trying to extract as much pleasure as they can from this world. And this is what Srila Prabhupada refers to as lording it over material nature. Right? This is the view of the materialist as though, everything that I, what is the word? Observe, there's a particular word, it's mine, or maybe I can make it mine, and therefore I'm going to try and extract so much enjoyment for myself and my family and perhaps my friends. So, and if we look around in this world, this is actually the illusion that is submerging the spiritual souls in this material energy. And in Kali Yuga, this is a very popular outlook on life, unfortunately. Right? And this is why we have so much exploitation. We have Mother Bhumi's natural resources are becoming totally depleted and ravished because of this misinterpretation of what this material world is, or what the material energy is, what the material environment around us is. And so this gives rise to this exploitative mentality. Now, even amongst professional psychologists today, one of the leading fundamental principles in assessing the psychological well-being of an individual is actually whether an individual has this capacity to enjoy and to experience pleasure. Right? It's what they refer to as positive emotions. As Vaishnavas, right, we of course, we want to put an end to our suffering and achieve lasting happiness. Right? Everyone wants lasting happiness. Right? It is a part of every living being that they want to. They don't want any obstacles in their path. They want to be happy. They want to be peaceful. Right? It's inherent to the living being. But in our case, we are not under the illusion that happiness or pleasure can be found in the material world. Right? In fact, our teaching is that by seeking, or by trying to make Krishna happy, or trying to make arrangements so that Krishna can enjoy himself, or trying to make arrangements so that the spiritual master can become pleased and happy, then our happiness will come, and it comes automatically if we can endeavor in this direction, not otherwise. So this is an entirely different concept of entirely different understanding of an individual's capacity to experience pleasure and enjoyment. So true happiness is not something that can be modified or manipulated according to an individual's worldly circumstances. Right? It is something that belongs to the soul. It does not belong to the material body. It does not belong to the material mind or to the material intellect or even to the material emotions. So the spiritual individual, right, due to being caught up in this situation in which they are constantly misidentifying with so many different identities and personalities, you see the image up on the screen there, right, as they are transmigrating from one lifetime to another, they are more or less in a constant upheaval, right, in this constant state of flux, I think they call it, because they don't have this sense of a permanent understanding of who and what they are. So as we know, the spiritual soul is by nature an eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. That is his eternal identity. That is his stable identity. And his permanent and stable activity is to serve Krishna. But when he is in material consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada calls it, when the consciousness is absorbed in material life, the spiritual soul cannot grasp that, and then consequently he is suffering so much. So, today most of us have heard of this psychological illness. Today they call it dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder. And that is a condition in which the poor spiritual soul becomes so bewildered and so unstable in the sense of who he is, right, and what he is, that he is maintaining numerous personalities or identities even within this one lifetime, right, even within the one body, right? Now, most of us here, we may not be so severely afflicted that we end up in that serious situation, but nevertheless, our situation is that over multiple lifetimes, we do end up maintaining multiple different worldly identities, right? And Srila Prabhupada has commented on this in Upadeshamrita text 8. Right? Prabhupada says that, as the material mind is taking on impressions from the interior material environment, those impressions sort of stick. And Prabhupada says that it becomes a very dangerous situation for the spiritual soul, because what happens is these material impressions, they can also come up in the consciousness from past lifetimes, and they mix with our current impressions. So therefore Prabhupada says, it's actually very precarious, very dangerous situation for the spiritual soul to be materially embodied because of this situation. So, therefore in today's shloka, and in the previous shloka, Lord Kapila Dev is advising that in order for the struggling spirit soul to come away from this torturous situation in which he does not actually know his identity, the spiritual individual must become very serious about performing devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? By becoming faithful to this practice of yoga. Now, there is a Sanskrit word, tivrena. Lord Kapila Dev he uses this word 3 times in this chapter. He used it in yesterday's verse, and he uses it in text 21 and also in text 22. Right? So tivrena means very serious. Right? And when Lord Kapila Dev is using this word, he's using it in conjunction with the words bhaktya and bhakti yogena. In other words, devotional service. So Lord Kapila Dev is saying, yes, we must become very serious about performing our devotional service for the Supreme Lord. Right. He also mentions it in chapter 5. So next slide, please, Gopal. Yeah. So, yoga is a phenomenon that trains us, it disciplines us, and it supports us, and it also gives us strength through which we can progressively prevent the material energy from disturbing us as we are trying to focus on, first of all, who we truly are as spiritual individuals and our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So the yoga process is intended to help us in our efforts to purify and elevate our consciousness so that we can more easily reach this goal of sincere chanting and hearing about Krishna. Now, we have 2 shlokas up on the board here, and I would like us all to chant these shlokas together in unison. Right? So first we can do the first one, and then I'll read the English translation, and then we'll do the second one. Okay, you can see them up there? Okay, first one after the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yam sanyasam iti prahur yogam tam vidi pandava nahyasanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati chashchana. Okay, the translation is, what is called renunciation? So this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Okay, next one, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Tapas vibhyodiko yogi gyabhyopi matodikaha karmi vyashchatiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So in this one, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, a yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruity worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Right? So Krishna is advising Arjuna to be a yogi in all circumstances, not just occasionally or on special occasions or every now and then, no, but in all circumstances. So why is this, right? It is so that Arjuna can achieve the highest state of consciousness for carrying out his duties for Krishna, offering his service and offering his love for Krishna. So Arjuna, as we know, he is a pure devotee of the Lord, and he already has Krishna's personal association. But we're learning from the Bhagavad Gita that still Krishna is describing and he's recommending these yogic processes because they lead the devotee towards perfecting their loving activities for Krishna. Now in the Mahabharata, we know that Arjuna's activity was to serve Krishna as the supermost excellent warrior. Right? So everyone, of course, has a unique activity that we are offering to Krishna. But whatever our particular activity is, we would be wise to accept Krishna's recommendations for how we can successfully link our consciousness to Krishna, right? And in so doing, we can perfect our service for him and also very nicely maintain our personal relationship with Krishna. Okay, Gopal, next slide, please. Yep. Now, in today's purport, right, we have faith is attained by controlling the senses, either by yoga practice, following the rules and regulations and practicing the sitting postures, or by engaging directly in bhakti yoga as recommended in the previous verse. And a bit further on, one may come to the standard of faithfulness by following the rules and regulations of the yoga system, and the same goal can be achieved simply by chanting and hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord. Right? Then Srila Prabhupada says, Bhakti Yoga is direct and the other process is indirect. But even if the indirect process is taken, there is no success unless one comes fully to the direct process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. In other words, we must not confuse practices that are intended to offer support to higher spiritual goals with those goals themselves. The original and authentic purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to offer support to the individual who is aspiring for self-realization and God-realization. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to be a yogi for the purpose of carrying out his duties perfectly for Krishna himself. And now let's move forward to, leave it on the same slide. We're going to have a look at another couple of Bhagavad Gita shlokas, right, this time in 248, right, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success and failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So this word equanimity, right, it means to have a steady mind, to be, anyone else have a very good definition of equanimity? To be equipoised. A bit louder, please. Sorry? Balanced, thank you. Yeah, balanced, to have a very balanced outlook on life. Right? Thank you. Okay, and then we go to Bhagavad Gita 4:42. Krishna says, therefore the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. So Krishna is instructing Arjuna how he can most easily carry out his duty and thereby fulfill Krishna's desire which is what every devotee is hoping to do. Now we're going to have a quick look at a couple of Srimad Bhagavatam shlokas spoken by Narada Muni. So the first one is Canto 1, Chapter 635. Right? Narada Muni says, "It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust, but this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul. For this satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead." And then in 7th Canto, Chapter 15, Text 28, Narada Muni says, "Ritualistic ceremonies, regulative principles, austerities, and the practice of yoga are all meant to control the senses and mind, but even after one is able to control the senses and mind, if he does not come to the point of meditation upon the Supreme Lord, all such activities are simply labor in frustration." So this brings us back to what Srila Prabhupada is saying in today's purport, namely that even if the indirect process is taken, there is no success unless one comes fully to the direct process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. Okay, next slide please, Gopal. Yeah. So now in addition to yoga, right, there are several other processes and instructions throughout our Shastras that are aiming to help the spiritualist to link their consciousness with the Supreme Absolute Truth, our dear Krishna, in order to perfect our devotional service for Him. Right, so Lord Kapila Dev has mentioned yoga in today's shloka, and in yesterday's shloka he mentioned detachment. Right? That it is the duty of every conditioned soul to engage in devotional service with detachment. Right? So we can understand that being detached from expectations of something in return, if we are carrying out our devotional activities, such detachment is definitely going to help us in our goals. But there's also other processes, such as, we have the three modes of material nature, right? And the proclivities or characteristics, whatever we call them, that are defined by Krishna as constituting the mode of goodness, right, sattva-gun, these are certainly conducive to creating an environment that supports devotional activities such as hearing about Krishna and chanting His holy names. So I want to quote a couple of shlokas, this time from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So now we have Lord Hamsa speaking. So this is Krishna in the form of this divine swan. So Lord Hamsa says like this: "When the living entity becomes strongly situated in the mode of goodness, then religious principles characterized by devotional service to me become prominent. One can strengthen the mode of goodness by cultivation of those things that are already situated in goodness, and thus religious principles arise." Right? And the second shloka, again by Lord Hamsa, he says, "Until one revives one's direct knowledge of the spirit soul and drives away the illusory identification with the material body and mind that is caused by the three modes of material nature, one must cultivate those things in the mode of goodness. By increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand and practice religious principles, and by such practice, transcendental knowledge is awakened." So in these shlokas, right, Lord Hamsa, he is speaking about sattva-gun, not Suddha Sattva. Right? And very interestingly, there are about 7 different principles that are also listed as being inherent to sattva-gun, which actually indicate a beginning to spiritual life, right? Even though sattva-gun is technically speaking a material quality, such as the characteristic of having faith in the spiritual master. That is listed as being in sattva-gun. We also have this shloka, the ability to see that all living beings are of the same spiritual nature. That is also listed in sattva-guna. Also, in sattva-gun, we have these really wonderful characteristics like cleanliness, truthfulness, austerity performed with transcendental faith, by those who are not expecting material benefits but are engaged only for the sake of the Supreme. We have peacefulness, purity, tolerance, regulated action, performing one's duty with great determination and enthusiasm. Right? All of these things are listed within Sattva Gun. So we can understand how these behaviors will also support us in our endeavors to, our path towards, eventually performing a pure devotional service for Krishna. Then we have similar teachings coming out of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is speaking about what constitutes divine and demoniac qualities, right, and all these wonderful divine characteristics by which the aspiring transcendentalist can gradually elevate themselves and eventually reach this, what we call the Vasudeva platform of consciousness, on which there are no disturbances for the individual. Then, of course, we have simple living, right? That Srila Prabhupada teaches so much on simple living and recommending this simple living lifestyle for devotees to make it easier for us to reach our spiritual goals. So simple living means living in harmony with with Mother Earth, right, Mother Bhumi, and to humbly accept what she is offering us. Right? It means to value the natural and the organic processes within our earthly environment, and also it means to set a pace of living that complements and sustains human life on this planet. Right? And it also means to not violate other living beings, but rather to allow them to progress peacefully towards their own spiritual goals by letting them live in a manner that was intended for them. Right? All of these concepts are connected to simple living and high thinking. And we can understand that, this type of living, yes, it promotes true sustainability, right? Sattvic sustainability and harmony amongst all living beings. And this, of course, is very complementary and supportive of devotional practices. Right? So Guru Das, right, another very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, very early disciple, he has written like this: "We are dedicated to simple living with God as the goal and God as the center of all that we do. This lifestyle is also known as Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion." So simple living is actually one of the features of the Bhakti Yoga lifestyle, and it is supporting us, right, in our endeavors, these endeavors that Lord Kapila Dev is speaking about. So, Guru Das is saying God is the goal, right? So it is not that simple living on its own is the goal. It is not that the Ashtanga yoga system on its own is the goal. It is not that Sattva Gun on its own is the goal. Right? All these are support measures, we could say, to help the devotee who is serious about reaching their spiritual goals. This word Tivarana, very serious. And we know that the topmost goal is Krishna Prem. Excuse me 1 second, I have to take a little cough lozenge. Okay, please, next slide, Gopal. Right. Now, in today's verse, Lord Kapila Dev is saying one must elevate himself to the platform of unalloyed devotional service by chanting and hearing about me. So I'm going to read just an excerpt from a pastime that was told by His Grace Brahmananda Prabhu, right, another very senior early disciple of Prabhupada. And Brahmananda is speaking about Srila Prabhupada's use of this word unalloyed. Right. So this pastime would have been from the end of the 1960s. I couldn't find the exact year. So Brahmananda says, "In Boston, Hamsaduta had just gotten a school bus, the first bus in the movement." Jai. One morning, Prabhupada called Hamsaduta and said, "Let us go for a ride in your bus." Hamsaduta excitedly said, "Oh yes," but then he realized that they had taken out all the seats from the bus. There was just the floor. They're probably planning on putting boxes of books in there. Prabhupada couldn't sit like that. So I got a chair from the temple and held it down while Prabhupada sat in it. All the devotees piled into the bus. Everyone was very excited. "Where are we going?" I said. "For a ride with Prabhupada." Vamanadev was driving, and Prabhupada was giving directions. "Turn here, go there, go on this road." Nobody knew where we were going, and no one was bold enough to ask Prabhupada. But Prabhupada knew where he was going. While the devotees chanted on their beads, we got to the downtown area, and finally we came to the waterfront, the dock area, and then we arrived at Commonwealth Pier. Actually, no devotees had ever seen it, and Prabhupada was always talking about Krishna and didn't tell us so many details about his arrival in America. Even when we got there, we didn't realize where we were, but this was the place where Prabhupada first entered America. Prabhupada started walking, and we clustered around him on this big pier with big roads, warehouses, and factories surrounding us. Prabhupada preached, as he always did, on his morning walk. He talked about pure devotional service to Krishna, and he used the word unalloyed. It is exotic, this unalloyed devotional service, because an alloy is a metal made of many different kinds of metals. Prabhupada was always saying unalloyed. That meant just one metal, not many. At a certain point, he said, "Yes, unalloyed devotional service." And he pointed with his cane, right? We all followed the cane, and there was a 100-foot-long sign on the entire side of a warehouse that said, "Unalloyed Steel Company." We all said, "Yes, unalloyed." That sign was one of the first things Prabhupada had seen when he entered America. And he showed it to us to explain unalloyed devotional service, a very simple instruction that he had made so graphic. We were like Prabhupada's young students, and Prabhupada was our teacher. As a teacher writes a word on a blackboard and then takes a pointer to show the class, so Prabhupada was showing us, right, with his cane. End of quote. Yes. So yes, this unalloyed means pure. And the shloka today is saying that, yes, we should endeavor to elevate ourselves to this platform of unalloyed devotional service. Now, I don't know, well, actually I'm guessing that there are a number of devotees who are aware of this particular purport. There is a purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Text 10. So we'll be coming to this in a few months, in which Srila Prabhupada discusses that devotional service and hearing and chanting, these can all be in one of the three modes of material nature. I've heard other devotees also make reference to this particular purport. When I first read this, I thought, oh, really? Because we know that Krishna's holy names, they are 100%, 108% pure, they are transcendental. Right, but in this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that, yes, it can happen. So what that means is that, we could be chanting Krishna's holy names, but our chanting could be in the mode of passion, for example. Or we could be listening to Srimad Bhagavatam class, but our listening could actually be in the mode of ignorance. Or we could be doing devotional service, and our service could be in the mixed modes, somehow. So, all these processes that I've been discussing today, they are intended to help us to rise above these contaminated states of consciousness towards an unalloyed state of devotion for Shri Radha Krishna. Right? Okay, so Jai Hare Krishna. So that concludes my presentation on today's shloka. So now we're going to move on to a little science discussion. Gopal, can you please move the slide forward? Right, so last time I gave Srimad Bhagavatam class, the topic of the Big Bang Theory came up, right? And I was actually saying how funny it is because on its own, this theory, it's actually not very logical when you look at the whole picture, the bigger picture, so to speak. And then we had one devotee say, well, actually, there's a quote when Prabhupada says that we support the Big Bang Theory. So I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to investigate this. So this devotee sent me the particular quote that he was referring to. And I also went through the whole Veda base. So the Veda base contains all of Srila Prabhupada's books, all his lectures, all his conversations. Right, now, I'm not going to actually explain in detail what the Big Bang Theory is, because it's a materialistic theory. But just basically, yes, there are a number of hits in our database where this Big Bang Theory is discussed between Srila Prabhupada and disciples and guests. And basically, the theory just says that, you know, these material universes in which we are situated, at one point they originated from a gross material chunk that exploded or expanded at some point in time. Right, so Gopal, please move forward to the next slide. So what we can see, okay, Srila Prabhupada is presenting the Vedic perspective on cosmology. And these quotes here are the quotes that this particular devotee was referring to. So you can read for yourself in these quotes that Prabhupada is saying, yes, you know, the explosion or the expansion part, you know, of the establishment of the material universes, yes, we can accept that, right? But the problem comes in, right, with these type of theories that are put forth by the scientific community. They are taking a very small part of something, like say with this Big Bang Theory. Okay, they are putting forward that this explosion that happens, you know, which Srila Prabhupada says, oh yes, that is actually when Mahavishnu glances over the total material energies. Right, so the total unmanifested material energies is called pradhan, right? And then Mahavishnu glances over that, and then Prabhupada says, yes, then there is some explosion, and then we have prakriti, right? So that's when the three modes of material nature agitates the material elements, and then we get prakriti, which is what in our world we call material nature, just nature, right? And the Mahatattva is the sum total of all of this. So the problem is that the empirical scientists of today, they do not know how to give the big picture of, you know, all of the components, all of the parts of, you know, how the material universes are established. So they will take one small part and they will present it to the public, and it is usually just some explanation of how the gross material elements are interacting. But when society at large sees that, they think, oh, well, that's all there is. You know, there's no mention of God, there's no mention of a higher consciousness, there's no mention of a higher intelligence. So, you know, we know that Srila Prabhupada, he often teaches like this. He says, do we know of any machine anywhere in the world that is functioning that does not have an operator? There is no such machine. Like even today, you know, 50 years after Srila Prabhupada's day, we have so much technology. Still, there is no software, there is no machine anywhere that has not been created by someone and that doesn't have a conscious individual who is pressing the buttons and setting the whole things into motion. So, you know, this of course is the more important and the more relevant aspect of, well, okay, so there was an explosion at one point when Mahavishnu glanced at the total material energies, but, you know, in the bigger scheme of things, that is only one very small part of this explanation. Now, when we are studying these sorts of topics, right, in Shastra, it is very important to understand what was Srila Prabhupada's mood in presenting these topics, right? What was his aim with it? So, Gopal, can you please switch to the next? Yeah. So, we can read here, right? Prabhupada was very interested, you know, he was very keen on undoing these arguments on behalf of the empirical scientists who were presenting these theories and totally leaving out any notion of a supreme being, you know, as being the source of elements, as being the source of the Big Bang, whatever it is, right? So this quote here is by Ambarish Prabhu, right? Another one of our senior disciples in ISKCON. And Ambarish is here, you know, he's been very supportive in establishing our planetarium, Vedic planetarium in Mayapur. So here he is explaining Srila Prabhupada's mood towards these sorts of theories right? Which, yes, they can have some little some little aspect, yes, that is correct, on some aspect on the gross material platform, but the bigger picture they cannot deliver because they are not surrendered to Vedic teachings, probably not even looking at Vedic teachings. So Gopal, you can switch forward to the last slide. Yeah, so here we have more conversations, right, when Prabhupada is expressing how he feels about these sorts of atheistic theories. And, even if these theories are not promoting atheism and impersonalism, still, this is their effect, right? This is their effect. Because when people hear an explanation simply on the gross material level of cause and effect, this particular chemical reacted with that particular chemical, this particular gas caused an explosion, or these chemicals, then people tend to think, so that's how the universe has got here. Right, so that takes God out of the equation. This is the problem that is happening today. And because we are in Kali Yuga, people's intellect is not very refined, it's not very developed. So people will think that this is it, this is the all in all. But even just going by simple logic, all we have to do is stop and think, okay, where did the gases come from? Where did the chemicals come from? Srila Prabhupada says, who decided that an explosion should happen at one particular point in time and not another point? All of these very basic fundamental questions need to be put forward by the scientific community, but they are not being responded to as they should be. Okay, so we're almost out of time. Look, thank you everyone for listening, and I'll just ask, we do have time for maybe one or two very quick questions or comments, if anyone would like to add something or ask a question. Yes, we have something over here.
Thank you, Maharaji, for the class. It was very amazing, well prepared, and very informative. So you gave a quote of Narad Muni saying how the yogis, they can, practice this yoga system, control the mind, but they can't satisfy the soul.
Yeah.
But then we have, devotees like myself, very beginner. It's like I don't have like this self-control which the yogis may have, but obviously doing this Krishna consciousness because there's something there I'm feeling some sort of Krishna consciousness. So how do we kind of differentiate the two? And these people may be completely self-controlled, but they don't have any Krishna consciousness, where someone in Krishna consciousness doesn't have much self-control, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, may I say, that our observations of these things, are of course not on the level of, what Krishna can observe. Right? So Krishna knows when an individual is ripe, is ready to come to Krishna consciousness. So, externally somebody may be acting as being very much in control, of their lives. But, real self-discipline starts, it's internal, by which we are, because, the mind is the sixth sense. It is counted as one of the senses. So to control the senses definitely means to control the mind. The mind is the sixth sense. So, I wouldn't sort of perhaps draw too many conclusions just from observing, other people and thinking, they are so much more disciplined than myself, and, so then how come I'm in Krishna consciousness and they may not be? Because, like I was saying, Krishna can see everything. He can see our thoughts and our desires. So he knows who is, truly, shall we say, disciplined and situated properly, in order for them to take that step further, to come to Bhakti Yoga. Yeah. And we need the microphone.
My question more was like, for example, take the actual person who is self-controlled, like the yogi which they're describing in the text. They are self-controlled. They're on that platform of self-control, whereas, like the beginner devotee may not have that self-control, like eating ice cream or something like this, offered to Krishna or whatever. But so then it's kind of like, okay, you can look at both these people and it's like, this person, how can you say they're on some sort of advancement level even if they're practicing Krishna consciousness, whereas these people...
because they're eating ice cream every now and then or something?
Yeah, it's like, not just ice cream, but many other things, you know, it's like, it can be many things.
So again, Lucas, a similar response. Krishna can see, you know, the heart and the mind of every individual. So if the material attachments of an individual were so pronounced that that individual could not take the step towards Krishna, then, you know, Krishna can see that, right? So, but again, we have to remember, like what I was teaching, you know, in most of my class today, is that these processes like Narada Muni, these processes of yoga and self-discipline, they are support systems, right? But ultimately, you know, as Vaishnavas, our goal is devotion to Krishna. You know, and Krishna can also see all our past lifetimes. You know, he knows which individual is going to respond to him in a particular way, even though they may not have totally, you know, gotten rid of all their attachments. But Krishna can see that, oh yeah, this is not so major and it'll go in time, you know. I don't know if I'm answering you properly. That's probably the best I can do for now, yeah? Yeah. All right, do we have one more? Maybe, oh yeah, Krishna Rupa, can you please...
Just a quick comment. Once again, thank you for the class, Padma. Prabhu, it was really enlightening. And there's a really wonderful name of Krishna, which is Bhavagrahi Janardana, that he sees the devotion in the heart.
Yes.
I'm speaking, you know, again to what you were responding, that Krishna actually sees that devotion. And in Bhagavatam it explains that Krishna induces and he sanctions. So when he sees that the soul has the sincerity to, you know, develop their spiritual life, then Krishna fans that.
Very nice. What is the name again? Please say it again.
Bhavagrahi Janardana.
Very nice. There we go. Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
If I may just make a comment.
Sure.
My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's not about renouncing the world, it's about engaging everyone in devotional service. So my understanding is if you've got something, just, you know, change it to serve Krishna.
Very nice. Thank you, Sadhana. Yeah, I think that's what we call dovetailing. Yeah, we dovetail our propensities and try and include them in our devotional lives. There's a very nice quote by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, do your sense gratification in something, okay, it may not be verbatim, but something like, do your sense gratification in the association of Krishna, then it becomes perfect.
And just one little comment, there was a famous pastime with Srila Prabhupada in France where they served Srila Prabhupada Bashadam and they had served him some ice cream, and then Prabhupada said, oh yum, who made the ice cream?
Yeah.
And they all looked at each other and they said, oh, we bought it. And Prabhupada said, just see, devotees everywhere.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Govardhana.
My understanding was we were told that the soul had the propensity to be eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, and that the other processes of yoga would give you the knowledge and the eternality, but it wouldn't give you the bliss, and that bhakti would give you the bliss. And
very nice.
That would be the motivating, because that's the entirety of your experience, and you can't maintain on any other level that you would need that relationship.
That's true. Yeah, I've read a similar teaching. Thank you very much. Very nice. I think David Guru Hari Prabhu behind you has something.
Thank you. Just on that point that Lucas was saying, that sometimes you see externally, even in our scriptures, somebody's performed great austerities. For example, Hiranyakashipu. He's so controlled, so sense-controlled, doing so much austerity, but just to become the Lord of the universe. And other people are doing austerities to get free from suffering. But they haven't given up the desire to control and enjoy. So even a beginning devotee, he's given up that desire to control and enjoy, she, and accepted that there is a Lord and that we're his servant, and therefore they're on a much higher platform, even though externally they may not exhibit that strict renunciation as other people who have material goals for that renunciation.
Very nice, thank you so much. Yeah, that's a good, we're getting such good responses from everyone. Anyone else have anything to add? Oh, we have Sri Hari Bhakti outside. Thank you, Sri Hari. Thank you, with your blessings. Thank you, Sri Hari Bhakti. All right, thank you everyone for staying. I know I've gone over time a little bit. Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.